In a case study, the data analysis comes down to just a variety of different factors, really depending on what um, your information and data shows. Both Stake and Yin speak to coding and categorizing information within your data, and Miles and Heberman speak to about what that may specifically look like. So organizing your data into different formations, such as arrays, different kind of matrix categories, coding it by color based upon different topics or subjects or intensities, the number of frequencies a specific event or word or item may come up, or as well as looking at the chronology of that event or phenomenon. There are tools that both Criswell and Yin speak to that also helps assist researchers, and these things are called computer-assisted tools. Some of them are called Atlas. Other ones that have come across can be Kadas. So there are different resources out there. Certainly there are tools that researchers can use within Excel spreadsheets to help log data, code data, label data, and look for patterns within that. So I think as a researcher, you need to look at building your toolbox and really knowing how to helpfully organize your information and look for it across a multitude of different formations. The computer-assisted tools could be helpful, but isn't necessarily necessary. One of the things that also is really important that Yin speaks to is how it is important to make sure that as a researcher you very much put forth rival theories. And those can derive from a couple different areas. It could be your own, the investigator's personal biases, and making sure that those things are, noted and upfront, as well as other theories that may directly contradict what your interpretations and analysis may be. They might not have substantial evidence, but those are things that you would want to note as you proceed through your research and analysis. One of the things that is important to also know in regard to data analysis is that the data collection and analysis may coincide, meaning that you may be doing data collection and analysis at the same time, which may cause shifts in the study. So that may mean that your analysis may be a little bit different than some of the other methods, which may be more linear, whereas this process may not be that way because you are receiving information. For example, if you are doing an interview with someone and there are certain questions that come up, that analysis that you've collected and analyzed may lead you to other questions that you may want to come back to or ask someone else. So as you are constantly analyzing the data, other questions may come up, which makes the process not necessarily straightforward, but one in which the researcher needs to be very much fluid in the rationale about why they are going forward with certain questions and how they're certainly coding and referencing things. It's really critical within the data analysis that you are very much have a robust, clearly defined organization of how you are labeling and coding information and how you are interpreting it. Within the data analysis, that is going to be very, very important to articulate that within your methods section, so that way it allows reliability, validity, and trustworthiness to the process. So if this is unclear or has question, if there are some holes in it, that could really, really create problems within your study. So it's really important from a data analysis standpoint that you certainly have a variety of tools to analyze the data, but also that you are very, very much conscientious in creating, securing your information within also making sure you are labeling it and coding it in very clearly delineated ways, so that way you're able to justify that and explain that in your own methods section. So it's really important from a data analyst standpoint that as a researcher you make sure that you are doing these things thoughtfully, purposefully, and according to what the research standards state within the case study methodology. In talking about inductive analysis, the scholar David Thomas, who is an international scholar, um, came about this process based upon his experiences. The rationale for the use of inductive analysis was really to use and summarize and condense raw data that was text down into different pieces. And so it was ideally trying to establish clear links between the data with the summarized findings and research objectives that were kind of already, the questions that were, kind of presented the study, as well as the inductive analysis provides a framework that allows the researcher, either by theory or model, to provide a structure to their data analysis. So this is a model that was developed by Thomas to help researchers analyze raw text data. And in the next slide, I'll speak a little bit more to the rationale why he came about this process. Inductive analysis gathers its data through a variety of sources, face-to-face conversations and interviews, telephone conversations, and even focus groups interviews that allow the researcher to get a lot of information in one sitting or one session. So once the data is gathered, there becomes a process of analyzing that data. Now, in order to analyze the data, one of the things that researchers need to do is really to clean the text up, so that if you are looking at the text, you need to make sure that the information that is being reviewed has no influencing marks, such as things like highlighting, bold print, or any kind of personal notes. The text has to stand on its own without any any interpretations or things that might influence a reader. The text is then, once it's cleaned up, is then read for themes and details, which is then broken into different categories for coding. The coding of the data then is analyzed for a couple things. One, it's looked for overlap. So if things are coming up over and over again into the themes, that may be something that researchers may go with. If something is uncoded, meaning that text has really not found its way into a category or theme, that might signify something, as well as any other data that might be only within one category. It may have some relevance because of that. So the coders are really looking at different patterns within the data, again, looking for overlap, things that may be uncoded or things that may be only in one category. The themes ideally are generalized into 3 to 8 categories, and within that, other subsets are then looked at within the larger themes. And again, that's a way to kind of take a lot of information, synthesizing it down into these general themes, and then looking for that within those subcategories within those larger themes. So again, it's really trying to take the original intent by Thomas was to kind of provide a framework to take a lot of data, raw data, and synthesize it down and then into these general themes and sub-themes. So inductive studies certainly present different challenges for validity and trustworthiness. Inductive studies can be supported by a couple different methods. Independent replication, comparisons of findings from previous research, the triangulation within the project, such as the coding, looking for themes, looking at the data, interpreting the data, as well as feedback from participants in the research to make sure that the interviews and data taken are actually correctly text so that when the readers read them, the information is accurate, as well as gathering other feedback from users within the findings. So you're doing it at two levels. One is just looking at the participants from the sense of their interviews, and then also looking at for the more the interpretive analysis later on within the study. So again, inductive analysis again presents and can be supported by these methods, but Thomas even notes that if you have with replication, researchers may, two different research students may follow the identical process, interview the same people, and may come up with different generalizations and themes within their coding. So that can be a challenge within this practice. So it's just important to note that.
So I'd like to take a minute now to take a kind of a review on inductive analysis and see how that relates to the case study analysis that we were talking about earlier in the presentation. First of all, there's some very strong similarities. Participants can collaborate in shaping the themes in both methods of analysis. And the coding of data is really to develop the major themes, again, and looking for the emergence of major themes within the data. The development of categories is done through the coding process in both methods, and there's no prior expectations. That means that the findings are going to arise strictly from the data that's collected during the research. So there are specific objectives in both methods that typically are going to guide that data collection and also guide the analysis process. And analysis of data is recommended through triangulation, again, in both methods. A couple of the differences that we saw is that in a case study, your findings are going to come directly from the participants, in a lot of cases directly from even the participant's voice. Versus inductive analysis, which really is shaped a bit more by the researcher or has the ability to be shaped a bit more and influenced by the researcher. Also, inductive analysis typically is going to strive to develop some type of a theory similar to grounded theory or some type of a model, whereas in case study, again, typically the purpose of a case study is to tell a story or to tell a collaborative story about the participants.